Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome to CED Office Hour Live, where we talk about all things community and economic development. This show is brought to you by the Central State University Extension team of Eric Smith, wave Eric, Ambrose Moses, wave Bells, and Amber Twitty. And what we're focusing on today is on different strategies to grow your business, and we're always trying to connect you to resources, not just information but resources so that you can make things happen, whether it's us directly or our different partners and organizations that we collaborate with. So before we get started, as always, I like to start out with our definition of what community and economic development is. Because you hear this word, community phrase, community and economic development, we call it CED for short, but people don't really know what it is, right? And it's really looking at how we live, how we work, how we play, how we thrive, and how we navigate through all of those spaces, all these things called life. And as CED professionals, we look at that whole system, whether it's the infrastructure side, such as um, affordable housing, building a new highways, development of public spaces or redevelopment of spaces, right? Reuse of spaces, revitalizing spaces, to what I say the other end of the spectrum is the is the people development, workforce development, self-sufficiency for families and individuals, career pathing, all of those kind of things, right? Personal development. To the connector between the two, which are the businesses and organizations that connect that and make all things go round, right? So you need all three components. As you don't have a community, you don't have a system. And as CED professionals, we look at that whole system, and within our respective expertise, what we do is we say, okay, how can we plug and play in that system to make a sustainable impact for generations, not just in today, but 2 or 3 generations from now, you still seeing the impact of that work in a positive light. Because all change is not necessarily good, right? So that's what we do. And we in this space with an extension, we always kind of say we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. So we work a lot with self-empowering, connecting, helping businesses grow, helping people get to whatever their goals are, the next level. Um, and in doing so, once they get there, they might not need us assisting, right? In that space, but we want them to come back with they have a new project, a new initiative, or a new need. So our thing is that give what we know, share it, so you can level up and bring somebody up with you, and then we're just facilitating and helping through that process. So today I have to excuse my voice, but today we have Raphael Underwood, and he is part of the Ohio Minority Business Development Centers, which is another federal government initiative. And he is, even though they're throughout the whole state of Ohio, he is the contact person for the Southwest region. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Raphael so that he can introduce himself, the agency, and then feel free to ask questions at any time. Feel free to put something in the chat, and let's just join us in on a conversation, right? So, Raphael, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raphael Underwood. I'm a senior business advisor. I wear two hats: senior business advisor for the Ohio Minority Business Development Agency, which is a federal agency out of the Department of Commerce. We're housed in the Greater Cleveland Partnership. The second hat I wear is senior business advisor for the Minority Business Accelerator, which is a program housed in the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce designed to accelerate the growth of minority-owned businesses, Black and Brown businesses. I appreciated Amber's warm introduction. I have over 30 years of experience in the community and economic development space, and I always like to approach it uh, from a holistic point of view, and that is to say, if all of communities, if all of the communities are thriving, then together we thrive as a whole. So you must uplift and build of even the most downtrodden in order for the entire community as a whole to advance and sustain. So I'm a big proponent of using that holistic approach. Um, they say a rising tide lifts all boats, but if your boat has a hole in it, I don't care how high the tide gets, your boat is still going to sink. So the first thing we try to do in community and economic development is plug the holes in the so that when the tide rises, when your tide comes in, then your boat doesn't sink. Having said that, as I said, one of my principal roles is I'm a senior business advisor for the Ohio Minority Business Development Center uh, in the Southwest region, which covers Greene County. Our role is to accelerate the growth of minority businesses either through the organic growth, either through mergers and acquisitions, um, or marketing or new products, new product development, that sort of thing. We introduce you to new buyers, new markets, whether that's through our federal procurement partners, connecting you directly with agencies. We also provide assistance with certifications, whether that's state, city, 8A, federal certification. So we are a technical assistance agency designed to provide management and technical assistance to minority businesses throughout the state of Ohio with $500,000 or more in revenues. And if you don't have a $500,000 more, don't fret. We can still help you. That just means you'll probably be working with one of our resource partners like the MCAP or the Small Business Development Center or Minority Business Contractors Assistance Center, something like that. So if you don't fit our threshold, that doesn't mean you can't call and ask questions. I myself am a former employee for the Ohio Department of Development. Worked there about 8 or 9 years, and so I have a wealth of experience in that round. I've been the economic development director for the city of Northfield, city of East Point, Georgia, Northfield, Minnesota, and Peoria County, Illinois. So I have quite a bit of background experience in programming and in economic development, general economic development programs, as well as community economic development programs, primarily with background in project financing, economic development, project financing. I also wear the hat as senior business advisor for the Minority Business Accelerator in Cincinnati. Again, that is a organization that is designed to accelerate the growth of minority businesses. And in that program, we target businesses with $1 million or more in revenue with the ability to quickly scale, whether you're in technology or the medical industry, even the construction industry. There is no limit to any industry. We'll work with any industry, except for I don't think we're allowed to work. And I got to say this: I don't think we're allowed to work with the cannabis industry yet. But other than that, as long as the industry is legal and above board, then we can work with it. Yeah. Um, at this time, I'll open it up for questions um, from the audience or from the panel in particular.
But well, I have a quick question, Raphael. Is the accelerator, is that government or is that private?
It is private. It's housed in the Chamber of Commerce. It is a private organization, although some of the funds, like we received an EDA grant to reach out and again accelerate the growth of minority businesses. But the funding is primarily private and some public foundation funding. But we are a private organization.
Okay, okay.
And we're in the middle of a fund launch. Hopefully, it'll be coming online here soon. We've been waiting for this launch here quite some time, but that should provide some capital access to businesses in the Ohio region and more particularly the area.
And so that fund launch, is that, can you explain that a little bit more, what that
Well,
is
yeah,
and
the
who can
MBA
participate?
Fund One is a fund that the accelerator hopes to launch in an effort to accelerate the growth of minority businesses through helping those businesses with $1 million or more in sales target um, those that qualify because there is a qualification process. Um, so helping them grow either through helping them develop existing products, in other words, sell more products to existing customers, or B, find new customers, C, develop new product for existing and new customers, D is that, or C, organic growth, whether that's adding another area or industry to what they already serve, and finally, and mainly, our main goal is to grow them through the acquisition process. We target about 50% of our fund to companies to acquire other companies,
Hmm.
either minority owned or non-minority owned. As long as those are good, viable companies, we try to find companies that may um, the owner may want to retire and doesn't have a succession plan. Um, or a family member that wants to buy the business, but yet it's a good entity, and it just makes sense to. One of the ways you transfer wealth is you transfer ownership. One of the ways you transfer ownership is you acquire, and so you use acquisition as a strategy to acquire and transfer wealth.
Yeah. Okay.
And have you, Raphael, have you spoken with the Black Achievers? We had Michael Moore on our show last week because I know that they're working on some funding stuff that might be alignment with what you're doing.
Yes, actually, Black Achievers is a partnership organization with the Minority Business Accelerator in Cincinnati. We work hand in hand, and we use Black Achievers to identify potential candidates for business ownership. So Black Achievers kind of there, they kind of like train, if you will. I wouldn't call them the farm team. I don't, because I don't want to make it seem like that, but they kind of train the owner to get ready for entrepreneurship and take them through that, and then they kind of hand them off to us in terms of us, helping them find in that acquisition and the opportunity to acquire a business and get started in business.
Derek, do you have any questions so far?
Yes. I missed the meeting last week about funding, and I just we're me and my cousin, we're just having issues getting the equipment for the landscaping, because as you know, those lawnmowers are pretty expensive, you know what I'm saying? And we need a solid, steady way to get our equipment, like fast. You know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the things you could, let me ask you this: do you have a business plan?
Yes, we did. Yes,
Is
we
it
do.
is it written?
Yes.
Um, One of the things I can do is I can take a look at that. Typically, if you're equipment funding, you have two choices: you either buy or you lease, and
Right.
you have to do a lease versus buy analysis to determine which is best for your business. And in terms of, do you want to build an asset-based business or a cash flow-based business? In which case, um, leasing will more than likely assist the cash flow of the business. Um, and an outright purchase will build your balance sheet. So it depends on the goals that you set. But one of the things you want to look at when you're doing that is it's very important that your projections support the growth, because the idea of adding the new equipment is growth, and I'm assuming with the new equipment is probably going to come some new jobs.
Right.
So one of the things you want to do is look at all of that, even from a job creation standpoint of view. There may be some tax credits or some job creation credits that you may be available for, that I'm happy to take a deeper dive with you into, that you may be available for, that may even make it less burdensome on your cash flow. But the key is your business plan has to support the growth, has to support the amount of uh, equipment that you're going to buy. In other words, you have to show that you have the cash flow in order to pay back the loan. And then what we call a debt service coverage, which banks like a 2 to 1 or 1.5 to 1, which means for every dollar in debt, you have a dollar and a half in the bank or what have you to cover their debt service. So all of those things would need to be looked at. Uh, it's a deeper dive than just, hey, I need some equipment. I think my business can do this. You really need to really look at your business plan, make sure that it supports the growth and supports the numbers and the amount um, of equipment and the amount of the loan or lease. As I said, you may want to look at if loans are not an option, because those, that equipment tends to depreciate rapidly. It's a rapidly depreciating type of
Right.
equipment. And so sometimes banks get leery of those type of equipments. They'll finance a car because that's a consumer driven, even though companies buy fleece, but it's mostly consumer driven, and it's a market that they're in to uh, please or satisfy a request for customer. But in terms of business, a lot of times you may have to go to an equipment leasing company or an equipment finance company. Sometimes banks are not the companies to ask for certain equipment. Usually equipment dealers and so forth will have a list for you of companies that participate in their equipment financing programs, because of the lack sometimes of a bank's willingness to finance a particular piece of equipment unless you have an established relationship with the bank, and you've had a lender borrower relationship where they feel comfortable with on that type of loan for you.
Okay.
And speaking of that banking relationship, um, next month we will be doing an episode, a segment on just that, building a relationship with a banker. You hear a lot of those personal or private bankers. Those are usually for your large scale businesses or people who are super rich, right? But there are
Mm,
strategies that you can build a banking relationship with the bank manager or the banker that's assigned to a particular bank, and still have a lot of those same types of services, and that will help your business to grow. And a lot of times they will give you access to different resources that they even know that might just be internal within the bank or their inner circle of contacts, right? So they do some business to business, or also known as B2B leveraging as well. So Ambrose will be leading that segment next month when we have the banker come in. So just want to let you know that we will be covering that as well.
okay.
So in addition to Raphael, the loans and the business acquisition and things of that nature that you do, um, want to go kind of outside of the accelerator a little bit and touch on certifications, the inclusion certifications. A lot of people will hear about small business, enterprise, women business own, women owned businesses, minority business enterprises, and they'll hear edge and veteran owned businesses. And um, I would like for you to kind of speak on that as a growth strategy and also give the background of you working a lot in that space because you've done a lot of work and how disparity studies also contribute to that space.
Well, of course,
I know that was an earful, but you can handle
no,
it.
certifications. As I tell people, they basically come on four levels: there's county, city, state, or federal. Federal certifications, you have the disadvantaged business enterprise or small SDBE certification. You have women-owned certification. I think there's a veteran certification, an AA certification. You'd have to get on their website, but there's four or five. I think there's actually maybe even two different types of women certifications, but there's four or five, maybe even six certifications that the federal offers. Then at the state of Ohio, at their level, there's the Minority Business Enterprise certification, and then the EDGE, encouraging diverse growth and entrepreneurship, the EDGE certification business, and then various cities like the city of Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Akron, Cleveland, and those have their certification programs, and in some instances, even counties um, certify businesses. Each have their own qualifications. One of the good news is with the all of the certifications with the passage of, I think it was Senate Bill 105, I believe it was, that now allows for the cross certification. In other words, if you're certified already with one of those entities, then you can uh, apply for your state certification, or if you're certified with the state, then you can certify with either one of those entities without having to use that myriad of paperwork that you first had to go on that. There are advantages to certifications. Certifications as a growth strategy, it can work very well if you uh, study and know the procurement space. I'll tell a story. I tell people because sometimes experience can substitute for capital. People don't understand. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I started my business during as a supplier to the state of Ohio without ever borrowing a dime from the bank, simply by winning my first contract, making a relationship with the item or the product, the supplier of that product that I wanted to bid, establishing a credit relationship with them, contingent on winning the contract. The first contract I won with the state of Ohio was a little over $814,000. Sell Yamaha boat motors. But I did all that without ever picking the phone up, calling the bank, and got it pulled off. So education and knowledge, getting in, knowing the system, finding out, and finding niche products is very key in supplying to governments and cities and federal government. You can find a product that that nobody wants to take on, or that you're a niche supplier in as a minority supplier, then you have a better chance. I don't, you know, office supplies and things like that, I don't bid because the margins are so small and it's so competitive. When you get one of the things you want to watch out for in the certification programs is look at your NIAX codes in your areas. If you see a ton of people in that area, then you know that that's going to be a very competitive area for you to bid in. And so you want to try to find niche products outside of the area. If you don't offer a niche service, such as engineering consulting or a construction type company, you want to find niche products and services so that you can maintain profitable margins when bidding, because that is one way you can get into trouble, is thinking, bidding and your margin is not enough to cover the cost. All you're doing is paying for the product, and you don't have enough money to pay yourself the light bill or by the time you look, it's all done. You say, man, I only made $1,000 on this bid. I should have made 10. So those are some of the things. 8A certification is a tricky one because you only have a 9-year window in that program in which to garner your federal contracts and participate in that 8A certification program. So what I tell people, they require you to be in business, I believe, at least 2 years before you can even apply. But B, have a contract or a source or a service fully identified that you're confident that you can go after and win. Identify as many of those type opportunities as you can before you apply, because once you apply and get accepted, that 9-year clock starts to tick. And I've had the experience where some clients, we've got the 8A certification and didn't get a contract until year 5 of 8A certification. And by then, you're supposed to be on the ramp up or ramp down from 8A and spinning off into the private sector and having more private sector business.
So
Um,
with that AA, I want to add that that is not the first certification you should go after.
no,
You want to
absolutely.
do other local or state ones. And during that time, if it is in your plan to do the 8A, do your research, like Raphael said, on what you're going to offer, but also start building relationships. And one of the blessings or good things about these inclusion certifications is that you get in front of decision makers instead of the gatekeeper, right? And so you have that opportunity. It gives you a platform to build those relationships throughout the year, not just a one-time thing. So you have to kind of map out what you're going to do, what you're going to target. If you're like Derek, if you're going, since you do landscaping, for instance, and you're looking at certifications, then if on a commercial side, look at what the research the landscaping needs are for transportation. Because every bridge, right, has landscaping around it. Every exit ramp has landscaping around it, whether it looks like wildlife or not. Those were intentionally planted for that area. And look at your processes. Are you able to offer a maintenance process of that landscape area that's cost efficient, or that is um, easy to maintain beyond the initial landscaping setup, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those are ways that you can differentiate your business from other businesses and leverage that DBE certification to um, to do that. Every airport. So when you think of transportation, the bulk of it is engineering. It is the construction side. Um, it is the different systems like elevators and all those kind of systems within um, the airport. But the airport has large retail space. They always have a lot of landscaping as you're going to the airport because that's the introduction, right? So the airport and transportation is more than just the highways. Anything that's affiliated with the airport is also part of that transportation. And that is a way that you can use the DBE certification. And DBE, you would apply for that. Even though it's a federal program, it's administered by each state's Department of Transportation. So that would be ODOT,
Okay.
which is the Ohio Department of Transportation. And if
Okay.
you just Google DBE, all the contact information will come up with who you need to call. Because Jolita doesn't have that region anymore. I think it's still Lynn, though. But whatever it is, I know they've had some change in leadership lately. So that would be one way to strategize on growing your business, right?
Yeah.
That's a great point, Amber. As, as Amber said, I recommend you start with your local certification too, particularly now that Senate Bill 105 is in effect, and that'll lead you directly to the state certification. Um,
Okay.
and state certification, And the agencies have been meeting their goals. Most of their stuff is in goods and services. Most of their set
Mhm.
aside are in goods
Good
and
services
services
and IT for the state.
and IT for the state. Yeah, they no longer offer construction. You know, get construction through DBE, the Department of Transportation. Then the city of Columbus, city of Cincinnati, and city of Dayton. I think Dayton has the procurement enhancement program. The city of Columbus had not too long ago completed a disparity study and has an MBE. Um, they don't call it a set aside, but they call it some MBE program for that. And then I think the city of Cincinnati has one
Oh yeah,
as
we have a whole
well.
lot down
And,
here.
and while we're on that, the other thing I really want people to be aware of and really start to pay attention to decisions coming down from the Supreme Court. The next one is due on the affirmative action, which, if my thought is this, that has far more reaching implications than just education. Probably be good for colleges like Central State and all that, because then you get the cream of the crop students. They almost have to go to our universities. That's a great point. However, in the other arenas, my fear is in the business arenas that um, they will start to back off from DEI commitments if this affirmative action thing goes away. If corporations, although they built goodwill, will now no longer feel like they have an obligation, or will they continue to do business? It's certainly the right thing to do, but um, I'm worried about the impact if they strike the affirmative action thing down, the impact that spillover that they have in the diversity and inclusion space in the business community. And I just want us to be all aware of that and to be conscious consumers of people that we're buying products from people that support our community. Again, that's important in community development, that the products that we buy support and give to causes um, in the community to help develop our community. So again, I'm cautiously optimistic that they won't overturn it, but if they do, I am just fearful of the ripple effect that might have caused outside of the education
Right.
uh, world.
Definitely.
Eric, you had a question or comment?
Well, I do have a question, but I don't know. I came close to you were going to jump in there. I don't know if there's any feedback first on that comment, because I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, just to that point, I think that protection of the of the set aside programs, of the programs within government that are intended to help remedy some of the past challenges and discrimination and all. Um, that is going to be something that's important, and you have to remain vigilant. To Raphael's point, and I sort of fear as well that sometimes folks get a little complacent, and and they don't continue to push. So those of us who are in the education space, in the space of helping or working with small businesses, I think that we still have to keep those businesses, at least some group of those business owners, sort of in tune, sort of motivated, sort of in an activist type mode, so that they can continue pushing, or if an issue does arise, they can quickly respond to that, with political, financial, whatever pressures they need to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Particularly as it relates to underserved communities and and minority community.
But I guess sort of along that point though, what are your so Raphael, when you talked about the Minority Business Development Agency, and even with the accelerator, you're talking about a focus on companies that have 500,000 or more or $1 million or more in revenue. Um, and then you talk about the organic growth and acquisitions, things of that nature. Where where what is you guys or what is your organization's position in terms of the access to capital? Because that's a perennial need for really all businesses, but particularly those underserved, underrepresented businesses.
Yes,
So
we our organization assists in helping those businesses access capital again by way of technical assistance. Just as I was talking to guest earlier, we review business plans. We look at it and try to provide all the technical assistance and pre-score and pre-qualify, if you will. But like try to take all of the things we know what banks are looking for, so we try to go through that tick and check box with the client before ever going, so that we increase their chances for success. Obviously, we can't guarantee chances for success. But the other thing we do is again we help them with loan packaging, projections. We help them access government funding programs, whether that might be the state of Ohio's direct loan program or their capital access program, their micro loan program. We kind of work and we help hold the client's hands, and then we just don't hand them off to the resource. We're right there with them in the process.
so so let me ask you, and then Eric, and I'll stop after this question and let you get yours in. So when we talk about, you mentioned restrictions in terms of funding cannabis related businesses or
Right.
working with cannabis related businesses. And Central State University, we have a license where there's some medical cannabis,
Oh, absolutely.
marijuana research being done. Um, and we're talking about some of the inequities. So there's all these inequities in terms of prosecutions over the years, dealing with
Yeah.
marijuana and other things. But when the state, including the state of Ohio,
Right.
starts
Yeah.
allow the licensing of to grow different types of hemp or marijuana, um, it's very selective and restrictive of who can participate.
Yes.
So a
I've
question that I
noticed that.
have is for folks who are interested in getting involved in cannabis as a business, as a legal, legitimate business. Um, what resources do you are you aware of for them in that way? How do they get access to capital to fund that type of business?
Now, most of the resources, I'm gonna say, be, because the type of businesses one and again, I would imagine we don't support, the government has never really supported alcohol businesses or cannabis. Of course, the tobacco industry, they went after them, but they supported it because obviously they got taxes from it. But the government has never supported that. If I were going to do a cannabis business, I would probably be looking at venture capital, and probably the one thing that you have to do is certainly take a look at the legislative impact in the state of Ohio. How do you get the license, the wait time? I don't know if it's similar to the liquor license process in the state of Ohio or not. I would imagine it probably would be. That's the only thing they probably got to base it off of in terms of how to go about licensing the opportunity to grow. Then where do you grow it at? Are you going to restrict it to rural areas? Are you gonna, what I'm saying? Like, are you going to be able, like Central State is in a great position because, like Wilberforce, it has land and it's out and it is in a rural location and it has an agricultural program. So certainly um, could put itself there. I just think the federal law has to catch up with
State and local and yeah.
the local and the states. And once that happens, then you'll see the restrictions on funding and everything else ease. Right now, I would say your best bet is going to be venture capital. I don't know that you're going to be able to go to a bank or something and say I want to borrow money to do a
So,
marijuana farm or
so
something like that.
is that something where your accelerator or related
We
organization
could
might?
look at yeah, we could look at finding venture capital or a venture like that through the accelerator. Again, not through the MBDA side, but through the accelerator side of that,
Okay.
and find that. And I'm sure there are um, some venture capital companies out there, particularly as it relates to the West Coast in Colorado and California and those places that are, kind of like light years ahead of Ohio in that industry. That's one of the things Ohio has to catch up to the industry.
Thank you.
Um, well, I would love to just take a few minutes and explore, Mr. Underwood, with all your extensive background and different kinds of community development, economic development you've done in your education. I don't know what have you found is most impactful as a strategy, especially when it comes to underserved populations.
Well, first of all, as it relates to underserved populations, first thing I would say to you is just because they're underserved doesn't mean they're undereducated. Talk to them, um, be honest with them. Um, they've seen the runaround, they've seen game. As I said, I like to tell you, they've seen game, they've heard it all. So I think the most important impact is that when you show up, you can do what you say, or you're going to be there to deliver the goods and services you say that you can deliver. Secondly, leadership. Leadership is the most important thing in community economic development. I say it like the mayor is the leader of the city, the governor is the leader of the state, the president is the leader of the United States. If if their commitment isn't to holistic, and when I say holistic again, I mean all rungs of the community, if their commitment isn't um, genuine, then that then you suffer that. I agree with President Biden in this that America is one of the great. There's nothing that we can't do when we work together. Unfortunately, we only work together when there's a crisis. We need to make a practice. If there was one thing that I would change, it would be a practice. Would make a practice, a daily practice of working together, making sure people had the resources that they need. Lastly, uh, community. It is a grassroots effort. You have to participate in your come up. You have to put some skin in the game. Not a lot, but some. And when I say skin, I mean participation. Um, if we want better schools, we have to demand better schools. And at the same time, we have to make sure we send our kids to school disciplined enough to learn. Um, so it, and that's what I say when I say it's a holistic approach. That means everybody has a hand. Every single person has a hand in the development of a community. From you know, you walking down the street and all you see is litter, then guess what? The next person coming riding down the street is gonna throw his bag out the window there. But if you see a community that's clean, if your neighbor cuts their grass and keeps their yard clean, then you're likely going to do it too because you don't want to be the sore thumb that sticks out that everybody is complaining about. And at the same time, when I was the economic development director for the city of East Point, this was the weirdest thing the city ever did. Never understood why. And when we went through massive budget cuts, the first thing I proposed was to eliminate that. And they looked at me and told me I was crazy. But I understood why, because it kept their city clean. The city of East Point monthly gives every household garbage bag. Garbage bag. It's in the budget. City for every monthly gave them garbage bag.
Hmm.
Couldn't feel like we don't do that. Well, here in Ohio, we go to the store, we buy our garbage bag. Who the heck gives garbage bags away? But even though they had the big garbage cans, it kept the city and the surrounding parts around it because it's only 1 mile from the airport clean. Less litter. People use the bags. They put the garbage bags right out alongside of the plastic bags. So um, there are some things that our government can do. It shouldn't do everything, and I'm not a proponent of it being in everybody's life and telling them what to do. But there are some things that the government has to do. They have to regulate clean water. If not, God knows how many nodules we'd have growing off and how many limbs we'd have growing on us if we left it up to corporations. So you know, people say, well, taxes, I don't want to pay any more taxes. Well, yeah, you need to pay a little bit because there are some services, essential services that government provides uh, that are driven by taxes that that have to be done and that you wouldn't want to see, without done. And then when there's some tragedy or something happens in a particular industry, the first thing we do is we look to government to fix it, but we don't want to give governmental resources to fix it. Every problem is solvable, but we have to allocate, and I believe we have enough resources, but we have to allocate the resources efficiently and equitably uh, to solve it. I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, well, that's important. I agree with that, and uh, because when you're in a society, yeah, I mean there are some things that you have to do because it's a society, because there are other people, other organizations and agencies all working together. I mean,
And here's
if
something
you
that's
want to
funny.
live,
Here's something that's funny to me. I hear all of the Build Back Better and the infrastructure and all of that. But how much do you hear Build Back Better communities? And what money is really being put into the communities for people to have decent housing and decent schools? Some of the schools in America are over 100 years. They're still going into schools without air conditioning. You can't even get a cell phone signal in some of them, much less how you gonna put Wi-Fi in them. I mean, all I'm saying is if we're gonna do it, let's be fair to all. Let's be fair to the entire community, the underserved, the privileged, all of them. Let's just be fair. We all have the same basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, and capitalism, I'm not against that. Your right to earn. However, you should not have loopholes to make you avoid paying your fair share. And so I guess that's where I get off on the people say, well, raise taxes. Well, you should raise taxes on the wealthy. We buy their products, we do these things, we enable this, and granted they employ and they take. Believe you me, those companies have the smartest accountants and they take the biggest and the best breaks and they still end up on the bottom line with billions and billions of dollars, and they should have to pay their fair share of taxes on that. They shouldn't be able to avoid or skirt the law by moving it offshore or putting it somewhere else.
right, right.
I've
And
got a question.
that would go a long way to helping communities evolve. I truly believe.
So you're on mute, Amber.
Derek, you had something to say?
Yes. I was I was just wondering, like, how you were saying about using the resources and being in the community and stuff, and keeping it cleaned and things like that. And I actually, like, me and my cousin, we actually go around. Well, he works all the time. He works 7 days a week, so he's not really in the business as much as I am, because I stay at home. I have MS. I'm a diabetic type 2, you know what I mean? So, but I try to at least go around, at least in my neighborhood, and pick out at least one house, whether it's a small yard or a medium sized yard or a large sized yard, and I literally try to clean it up and make it look nice for free.
And that's what I'm talking about, getting involved. So what I would recommend you do is get you a group of young people and take them with you as well, because when you instill it in them young, they grow
Right,
up they grow up with wanting to keep it clean and wanting their yard to look nice. So along with you doing that, make it a little easier on yourself and get some young people. And believe it or not, man, young people take pride in their work. They walk past
right,
their work and say, "Man, I did that. I had look at there. Didn't I do a good job, mom? Didn't I do a good job, dad?" Or what have you. And that's what I'm saying. It's a believe it again, community economic development. Yes, it's up to the government, but believe you me, it is a grassroots effort.
right,
Community gets tired of something, they will move the needle.
Sort of along that line, when you talk about the grassroots nature of it, of CED, um, and given your your history experience over the years, what thoughts do you have in terms of connecting with the those in need, those businesses, those business owners, those folks who are looking to go into business? We know we have content, information, resources, from the educational standpoint that can help them. How do you get them in the room? How do you get them to log on to the webinar? What's your
Um,
thoughts on that?
well, again, all of this is new to the whole webinar thing. Obviously, is new to those of us who, we came along during the I guess revolution. PC set for a big block on your desk, or a laptop was one of them compact things that you lugged around like a suitcase. Um, with that being said, Derek, I'm old fashioned, Ambrose, and I liken this back to now that we kind of out of COVID a little bit. I liken this back to there used to be an old American Airlines commercial where the guy says, everything's done by a fax or phone call or, a teleconference. And today everything's done by Twitter or Facebook and and they were losing business as a result of it. And so he gets in the room and he hands everybody plane tickets. And he says, well, you're going to California and you're going to, New York, you're going to Alaska, you're going to such and such. And they look at him and say, well, boss, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to see that old friend who canceled his account that we've had for 30 years this morning. I'm saying that to say, I think we're going to have to come out of our ivory towers and go. When I say grassroots, I mean we got to get in the grass too and go to the people. And uh, again, the most effective thing that I can say, because now we start talking about building an alliance or building a coalition, building capacity. When we start talking about that, first thing is we have to go to the community. Here's one thing I've learned: is never tell the community what they need. Let the community tell you what their needs are.
Exactly.
Okay. Um, there was a I was at a conference, and a guy told the story about them being missionaries over in Africa. They had gotten their business degree in the University of Richmond in London, and they have to go 2 years in Africa and missionary. And they thought the Africans didn't know how to farm or garden. So they plant tomatoes, they plant lettuce, they plant corn, they plant all this stuff thinking they're showing these Africans, this tribe how to farm. And all the time they're doing all of this, the tribe is laughing at them. And the two missionaries are sitting over there and, well, what is it with these people? Why do they keep laughing at them? And they done put a wooden fence as best you can up with the wire around. Why do these people keep, why are they laughing at us? And I mean, every day they go and they check and they do a little farming and they check the plants and water the plants and irrigate the plants and the tomato plants and all of this stuff. And goes on, comes time for harvest season, right? So the day before they're going to go harvest, they go look and see how big the tomatoes are. And they had, the guy was saying they had some, like, you wouldn't believe the tomatoes that come out of the soil and the fruit and stuff over there. So they go and do this. So they go to bed that night. The next morning, when they get up, the field is ravished. The corn and everything is just run down. Tomatoes ate, you know, cucumbers, whatever they, gone, ate, or ruined. And when they get up the next, to go and see the ruination of all of this, they find hippos, rhinos, and elephants, and all of this kind of stuff. And so the moral of the story is, so the people were saying, so they said, so they went to the village and said, you mean tell me you let us farm? Why did you let us farm and let us do all of this, knowing that you knew how to farm and and that the animals was going to eat our bounty? And the guy looked and said, hey, you never asked. You never asked us if we knew how to farm. You assumed that we didn't know. We've been knowing how to farm. Our problem is we can't keep the animals out from eating it. That was the problem we need you to solve. That's why I say ask the community. Let the community tell you, because we'll end up as CEDers trying to solve a problem they're not asking to be solved. They're perfectly, they know the answer to the problem. What they're trying to figure out is, how do we keep it? How do we keep it sustained?
Right, right.
Exactly.
That is excellent. That's excellent. That's so important.
So that's kind of how, what my approach is to community economics.
And that comes from having a rapport and building that trust where you can exchange, information and disclose, that
Oh
kind
yeah,
of, that thing where it might be something that's sensitive, but
yeah.
that
Oh,
sensitive
absolutely.
topic is only going to be discussed if there's trust.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even with the situation in Wilmington when DHL closed, I had to build a rapport with the community. I mean, it was, they'd already, one thing, when a community is devastated by a natural disaster or a disaster, people are downtrodden, man. People are crushed. And if you don't have any empathy, uh, or even sympathy for that, if you can't, one of my other favorite things a friend of mine have is put yourself in the other person's shoes, you know. Um, and I often do that, even with my white supremacist brothers. I know that's off top. I try to put myself like, what is it about a person of color that you can hate so much? What? And I couldn't come up with nothing. Like, the fact that, is this literally the only thing that you have is just an indifference that can't, that's a natural indifference? It's humanitarian. It makes no sense to me. And that's why I say again, it has to be a holistic approach. And only then can I don't think war is the answer. I'm an old Marvin Gaye guy. love conquers hate. I believe that true in my heart, and don't mean that you can't you shouldn't be prepared to go to war. It just means try love first, try kindness first.
Right, right, right.
Okay, well, on that note, how did we come back from that? Like, you summed it all up. So, I know Eric had put a resource in there. So, Eric, would you like to say what you put in the chat?
Well, I don't know if it's the same story, but a similar one is told by Ernesto Ceroli.
That's
Um,
who it was.
yeah, so
That's
he's
it.
got
That's
some
his story. Ernesto. He wrote the book. Did
yeah
you get his book?
scripts from the Zambezi. Yep,
Yeah, that's him.
and his TED Talk
That's
is
the guy.
there. I put the link to his TED Talk that has that story in it.
Yeah, man, and it was the craziest story ever because they said, "Hey, you never asked," So and that's I saw him. He was in Columbus about um I was still working. I want to say at the SBDC, so that would have been '96 or '97, and he told that story. He was coming back, but that's exactly who that was, and I've never forgotten that. And if I ever meet him again, I'll have to tell him the influence by telling that story because that taught me in my young career to listen to the community. That taught me to, just open my ears and really hear what the issue is because you have to build, what the word is escaping me, a consensus. Community development a lot of times is about consensus building because you can't satisfy all the people all the time. Somebody is going to be dissatisfied with it. Could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Somebody going to tell you you should have used whole wheat instead of flour or something. I don't know. It's it's uh it's crazy, but that's kind of the way. But that's kind of that approach and that story there had like one of the biggest impacts on my professional career because it literally taught me to listen to my customer, to listen to my client, because only through listening can you really discern what they want. They'll tell you they think they need something else, but if you're really listening, then you can begin to tell them, well, I heard you say you need this, but it sounds like you want this. Is this, so, but yeah, that story stopped me dead cold from going in telling people what they need because that was my approach. Because when you first, you get your degree, you get 5 years, you become all of a sudden a subject matter expert. So you think you're telling people what they need instead of listening to people tell you what they.
Mhm.
That was a little transition.
Well, we're coming up on our time, so I like to take this opportunity to make sure anyone from the audience, as well as our CED team, have any closing comments or questions.
Well, I just wanted to thank Raphael for sharing time with us this afternoon. I've appreciated the conversation, and I think that it may be something that we might consider doing, maybe some a panel at some point in the future, and bring in and ask Raphael and maybe some others with some seasoning in their experience there to so maybe talk about some of these issues in depth with the community. Just have a sort of a panel of folks because I think there's a lot of value to be drawn from that. So thank
N-
you.
Derek, did you have any closing comments?
Um, no.
Okay.
Besides, thank you, and I appreciate it. The information was helpful, and I hope to be able to join y'all next week.
We're here every week. On that note, we're here every week, Thursdays at 2 p.m. live. And then we archive the episodes on our Central State University Extension YouTube channel. So feel free to peruse some of our past topics as well. And Eric, as you see, my voice is going out, so I'll let you close us on out.
Right. Well, thank you again. This has been truly insightful. I just appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that joined us. And we'll see you next week.